I'll be one of the volunteers working alongside you in the special needs ministry. First, I just wanted to say thank you for serving. I can't wait to see how God uses you to help our families impacted by special needs. And second, I just wanted you to know that if you need anything, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have or help you in any way you need. But for now, follow along, and we're going to dive into what this buddy system will look like as we push it into our children's ministry.
The first thing we're going to talk about is the mission and vision statement for the special needs ministry. Now, these are going to be the same as they are for our whole church. We have the same goal for our special needs ministry, but the route to get there is obviously going to look a little different. So our mission is that we exist to make disciples by helping people know, follow, and serve Jesus here and around the world. And our vision is just simply to see every person treasure Jesus with their head, heart, and hands. Now, before we get into our training, I thought it was important to take a look at what the Bible says about disabilities in the church. I'm not going to read all these verses to you, but I did want to have it here as a reference for you. But the Bible says that we're all created in God's image. We're all fearfully and wonderfully made. God allows disabilities for His purpose. Jesus said that disabilities exist to glorify God, and how disabilities in the church are supposed to exist together. So now that we've talked about why we're doing this, we're going to dive into how we hope to accomplish it. So the first thing we'll be doing is creating a buddy system to push into our children's ministry. Essentially, this will just be an adult that pairs with a kid, and they push into their Sunday school class, and they meet all that child's needs so that they can hear the gospel. So before we dive into all the little pieces of that, I want you to take a quick listen to 2 videos by Sandra Peoples. She's out of Texas, and she actually pairs with churches and helps them create these buddy systems. So let's take a quick listen to her, and then we'll dive into it.
Now, one of my favorite things about this role is we actually have a biblical example that we can follow about what it looks like to be a good buddy. And that comes from Exodus 4. And so I want to read some of that to you as we get started. So in Exodus 4, this is where God has come to Moses and has put this calling on Moses' life. And he says, you're going to go before Pharaoh and you're going to say, let my people go. Moses isn't quite sure about this plan. So in verse 10, he says, "Oh, my Lord, I'm not eloquent either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and tongue." Then the Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall speak." But then Moses says again, "Please send somebody else." And so the Lord provides a helper. He provides Aaron, Moses' brother, to come alongside Moses and to help him fulfill the calling that God has put on his life. And essentially, that's what you're doing as a buddy. You are coming alongside a student, a child, or a teenager, and you are providing help so that they can fulfill the calling that God has on their life. And so what an exciting opportunity we have to be able to serve not only the child that we're helping, but the entire family. Like I said, I am a special needs sibling and a special needs mom. And so if there weren't somebody at church who could help my son feel comfortable and be able to participate in activities, none of us would be able to come. I would have to stay home with him. So you are not only serving the child or the teenager that you're assigned to, but you're also serving that whole family. You are making it possible for that entire family to be able to attend church together because you are there to provide that support.
Your role as a buddy. So what does it mean to be a buddy? What does the average Sunday look like when you are a buddy? And what are the priorities and expectations for you in this role that you're in? So the first question I think we should answer is, who are we there to help? When you signed up to be a buddy, whatever language that your church used, disability ministry, special needs ministry, or just getting into the children's ministry or youth ministry classrooms to just provide extra help for those students, these are the kind of students that you're looking for that you should be able to help. It is those who need adjustments to understand the lesson, feel comfortable in the environment, and participate in the activities. And so you'll see in this picture, this was from VBS a couple of years ago. And so we have our pre-K class up on stage, and a couple of the kids just needed a little extra help in order to participate in the activity. And so that's what our buddy was there to do, just provide that extra help. And so like we talked about with Moses and Aaron, you're really coming along students who may need help to participate in the lesson, understand the lesson, and feel comfortable in the environment. So here's some common diagnoses for the students that we may serve. The first one is special needs, which is kind of an umbrella term. That could include students with autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, being deaf or blind, or other physical or cognitive disabilities. Like if you're picturing disability ministry or special needs ministry, these are probably the students that you are expecting to serve. But there's other students who are going to need help, either modifying the lesson or modifying the environment in order to be successful at your church. And that includes students with learning disabilities like dyslexia, dysgraphia, or other oral or written language disorders, and executive function deficits. Those are when you're presented with all kinds of different options, which one do you do first? Those are our executive function skills. You're also there to help kids and teens with mental health or behavior diagnosis. So that includes ADD, ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder. There could be trauma in their backgrounds that make things hard, like attachment and sensory issues. They could have social anxiety or something like OCD. So at our church, our ministry serves and our buddies serve students who fall under any of these categories, or even students who don't have a diagnosis at all, but they're communicating through their behavior that they need some help to feel comfortable in the environment and to understand the lesson that that we're learning. So here's the role of the buddy. First, you are there to make the gospel accessible and understandable. So this is what makes the church environment different from the school environment or their therapy environment or the home environment, even in some ways. Your number one goal is the gospel. So you are there to help the student understand the gospel and respond to the gospel. And so that means you're just faithful to the call, and you're faithful to do what you can to help that student be able to listen to the teachers when the teachers talk about the gospel, participate in the lesson when they're giving examples and learning from scripture, and then you're there to just make the environment more comfortable so that they can respond to the gospel call. You're there to ensure safety. You're there to ensure the safety of the student that you're matched with, but also their peers in the class. And we're going to talk about some situations where you might need to step in and make sure everybody is safe. But remember, this is one of your goals as a buddy. Part of your role is to ensure safety. Another one is to provide support. So you're there to provide social support, emotional support, behavior support, and all of those things kind of fall into being a good encourager and being there to cheer on the child and to help the child make good decisions. Empower giftedness. So we know that our church body is made up of lots of parts and that everybody has a role to play in our church family. And so especially if you are serving teenagers or even young adults as a buddy, empowering giftedness is a really important part of your role. How do you come alongside them, like Aaron came alongside Moses, so that they can live out their calling and their giftedness? The next one, encourage socialization. Church is a social place. We talked about how we need one another and how we're all there to serve one another. But especially when you are young and a kid or a teenager, navigating those social situations can be really tough. So you are there as a buddy to help the students navigate some social situations. And we'll talk about examples of how to do that. The next one, anticipate triggers and have compassion during times of stress. So we're going to talk a lot about behavior, but let me just clue you in right from off the bat. Behavior is communication. And so when we are seeing disruptive behavior, they're trying to communicate something to us about how they feel or what the environment feels like for them. And so we, as a good buddy, are looking at triggers that could set these kids off and have compassion for them during times of stress. We're not saying that they're a bad kid. We're saying that they're having a bad time. And so that's a way that we can kind of adjust our expectations, and a way that we can be compassionate when they are feeling overwhelmed or under stress, and then they may act out in ways that look like distracting or problem behaviors. And we are there to anticipate that, to come up with solutions so that we don't get to meltdown mode. But if we do get to the meltdown mode, have compassion for the students that we're serving. And we're there to work with the teachers and ministry leaders to find solutions. Now, I don't want you to think that all of this is up to you, because you are part of a team, and the rest of your team is there to help you and empower you, and everybody's going to work together to make sure that these students are successful. So for us, this is what our buddy bag looks like. And these are some of the things that could be in a buddy bag. You could have sensory aids. And so you'll see, like, we have little poppets and a koosh ball. Those are sensory aids that help when the kid is overwhelmed by sensory input. There's adaptive material. And so if you have a child with low motor skills, for example, and they have trouble holding a pencil, then you may have either like a really big crayon that's easier to hold on to, or we have in the picture these little red and blue things on the top. Those are called do-a-dot markers. And so instead of drawing a line or circling, they're just putting a dot on what the right answer is. You may have visual tools like a visual schedule that you see. That's going to decrease anxiety for the kids because it shows them what's coming next. And then you're also going to have info about the student that you're helping. And we're going to talk about what that looks like. But at our church, our buddies wear these buddy bags. They're not for the students to wear, they're for the buddies to wear. And so then the buddy has everything they need with them in order to help meet the needs of the student. They're all there in that bag, whether they're assigned just to one student that they're helping, or they're there as a classroom helper to assist anybody. So let me remind you, you don't have to be an expert in every diagnosis. There could have been things on that list that I shared that you have never even heard about before. You don't have to wait until you're prepared for anybody who might walk through the door. I hear a lot of churches that use that excuse. Well, we're not going to do anything until we can help everyone. Well, God's not calling you to help everyone who could possibly walk through the door. He's calling you to help the ones who do. And you can learn more about that student specifically. You can learn more about their diagnosis. You can learn more about their family and their needs. And you can become a great buddy for that student or for any of the kids in the classroom who need some extra help by being empowered by the Holy Spirit to help you, asking good questions of the people who are on your support team, and just knowing that God chose you for this role, and he's also bringing these families into your church, and that he will help you meet their needs and problem solve and do everything you need to do in order to serve these families. I also think this is a really good reminder to put here at the beginning. You as a buddy, you have limitations. Now, limitations are a good thing. Limitations come from God. You only live in one location. You only live in one time period. Those are limitations on who you are and what you can do. And so there are some limitations on you as a buddy that I think are helpful to remember. The first one is you have limited time. You are only with these students for an hour, 3 hours maybe on a Sunday morning. And so you are not there to fix every issue or be the only influence in their life or be the only opportunity for them to make a friend. You are only there in that time with them. And so make the most of that limited time, but realize there's going to be things going on at school, at home that influence their time with you, and you can't worry about all of those things. Your focus is really that time that you're together. So the second one is limited skills. We all have limited skills. I've been doing this for over 10 years. I have a son with autism. I have a sister with Down syndrome, but even I have limited skills when I meet a new student and I have to meet that student's needs. I don't know everything. I don't have every answer. And I don't have to, partly because I'm on a team, but partly because it's not all up to me to have every answer. And so don't don't be embarrassed by your lack of skills or the number of questions you ask. That's part of being a good team member and being part of that body of Christ where we rely on each other. And so nobody is expecting you to be a miracle worker in that hour and a half that you have with a student, because they know you are a volunteer helper at church. And so that is some limitations on the skills that you have and the skills that you can develop in the students you're matched with. And last, you have a limited goal. Now, the goal that you have is the most important goal we could have, because that goal is the gospel. But that takes precedent over any other goal that you could have. Like, you're not there to help them write their name where it's easier to read. You're not there to fix every possible social situation that they may encounter. You're there to help support them. But all of that support is for the goal of the gospel. And so just remember, it is okay to have limitations on your time, limitations on your skills, and especially limit your goal to saying, what can I do to communicate the gospel to this child in a way that they understand and an environment where they feel comfortable? And if you do nothing else on a Sunday, then God will call you faithful to your ministry call.
So now we're going to take a look at communication and how that'll look for us. How does the buddy get to know the child? So I'll give you a little bio sheet with all the information you need, and I'll also connect you beforehand with a classroom teacher via text. It may take some time for you to get to know that child, and that is totally okay. If there is an emergency, text Penny or me, Julie Kennedy. But if you have any questions or any incidents occur, please contact me. That way I can fill out incidents reports if necessary, or communicate anything with parents that needs to be done. Now, communication with parents. This is an important one because special needs students can't always communicate themselves. So it's important that we communicate clearly for them. So we expect clear and honest communication with families always. The buddy, which is you, will communicate the basics about the morning when the parent picks up their child. We want to try to keep this positive. It is okay to communicate issues or something that you see the child is working on, but we still expect that to be communicated in a positive way. Any incidents or issues that you feel you are having with that child should be reported to me so that I can communicate it to parents. We don't want you to have to communicate the hard things, so please reach out, and I'm happy to help with any of that. And the one thing I want to stay on repeat in the back of your mind is we may not do it all perfectly, but we can do it all lovingly. Now we're going to take a look at the adaptations. There are 3 ways that we're going to adapt to meet their needs. This could be environmental, it could be social, or it could be academic. But the goal through all of this is to communicate the gospel to every child in a way that they understand and in an environment where they feel comfortable. So environmental challenges. This could be sounds, visuals, smells, textures or pressure, how their bodies feel, unknown expectations and routine. So to give you an example, if it is a lot of sound, it's overstimulating, and you feel like your child needs a break, you might slip headphones over their head. You might take them out of that environment for a moment and go for a walk down the hall and then return when they have regulated. Social challenges. This could be anxiety about expectations. It could be fear of peer reactions. It could be comfort level with the adults. Do they have a trust with that person yet? So some examples of this, it might be difficult for them to play games with peers. It might be difficult for them to keep hands to self. Now we're going to look at academic challenges. Can their minds and bodies meet the expectation of the lesson time? So for example, if a child has dyslexia, we might not ask them to read aloud if they aren't comfortable. If a child has ADD, we don't need to ask them and expect them to sit and be still for forever. They might need some movement breaks. So now let's look at a couple examples. Nathan, an 8-year-old, has autism level 1 and sensory processing disorder. His goals include participating in class discussion with respect, completing the activity sheet with assistance, and sharing a prayer request when it's his turn, and telling his buddy or parents one thing that he learned. Nathan needs reminders to keep his hands to himself when he's waiting in line and at circle time. He has a buddy who uses a buddy bag with fidgets, a visual schedule, and he can ask that buddy to take a walk with him when he needs a break. Another example, Dave, a 16-year-old, has dyslexia and social anxiety and embarrassment. He isn't called on to read aloud. The buddy in the room looks out for times he's reluctant to join the group activities and either helps him enter the group or asks him to help him with another task. When he was younger, his goal included completing a modified activity sheet. So like if he was copying something down, he might have a word bank to help him fill in the blanks. Or he could share answers verbally instead of writing them out. Behavior basics is one of the most important components because behavior is just communication. When a child is having difficult behavior, it's often the only way they know to communicate it. So it's important to look at it and figure out why. So our team goals for distracting behavior. 1, we're going to look at the core need driving the behavior. Why are they acting this way? 2, solve the problem and work to prevent the problem from occurring again. So you want to fix it, but you also want to be proactive to keep it from happening again. And 3, work with the student and the parents when possible to develop consistent and appropriate communication for expressing their needs. So if we look at an example of this and we notice that every time we break out and do centers with friends, our little buddy hits somebody. So if we break that down, we might end up saying, okay, I see they're struggling with sharing. So we're going to solve the problem at that time, but we're also going to work to find ways to prevent it from happening again. So this might be just having a quick talk before we do centers. Hey, we're going to share with this friend. Can you please give them a piece? It might also be that we're going to start just having a little social story and working one-on-one with a friend to the side every day to practice what it means to share. So the goal is just simply to see why they are doing what they are doing and try to find ways to help them to communicate it in a different way. Teaching desired behavior. So a lot of our special needs students actually think in pictures instead of words, and they also often struggle with language. So it's important that we reduce words and we add visuals or body language to help them. So an example, their teacher may be up there and say, so on this activity, we're going to cut this out, you're going to glue it on, and when you're done, write your name on it and turn it in. You have lost them. But if we sit down and we put a picture of scissors and then a picture of glue and then a pencil, they can see a visual. Okay, first a cut. When they complete cutting, they see the next visual, glue. I'm going to glue. The next visual, a pencil, and you'll say name. Write your name. So that's just a way to break down the language and to give them visuals and pictures to help them complete tasks. Another thing that we need to talk about with teaching desired behavior are the 3 steps. We want to state the desired behavior, use our body or picture to model it, and ask them to show us what's expected. So that example we just gave applies here. And then the other thing, routine and repetition are very important. You only have them for an hour to 2 hours every week. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of consistency to teach the behavior that is expected and desired, and that is okay. It is still attainable and we can accomplish it, but it will take time. The last thing we're going to look at is some common challenges that you might face. Now keep in mind, every friend is different. They all have different goals. They all have different things they're working on. So if a child is struggling with going in the classroom, we want to ask, what's the motivation? Is it a struggle with transitions? Is it getting away from mom and dad? And there are things we could do. You could make the hallway fun. You could give the child a task. You could let him or her keep a security object. And you could also show them a picture of mom and dad in service or their class. If a child interrupts the teachers or answers every question, again, what is the motivation? Do they want attention? Is it a distraction? Are they trying to get the lesson to go quickly so they can go back to having fun? You're going to want to set a clear expectation of the behavior and then reward what you see. So again, you're keeping it positive. And then you could also offer alternatives for your buddy. Could you have them whisper the answers to you? Could you have them write it down? If they struggle with joining the group, again, what's the motivation? Is it they don't want to transition from something fun? Are they wanting attention? Are they embarrassed? Do they struggle to sit still? Some things you could do. You could use a visual timer and a visual schedule to help the child know when the lesson will happen and what's going to happen next. You could offer comfortable seating and give them a fidget, so they could be fidgeting with their feet, or you could give them something to keep their hands busy. And also just give positive attention when they join the group. Elopement. So this is essentially running or moving away from the group. What's the motivation? Sensory overwhelm? Is it for attention? Is it for the avoidance of what's expected? The first thing we're going to do there is decrease opportunities. Do we need to close doors? Do we need to make sure that there is always an adult close by the door? Have more obstacles in the way. So again, an adult. You can move them further away from the door. And then develop a response plan. So this might just be alerting teachers next to your classroom that, if you see this, help us stop. And then you're going to want to train everyone in the possible path, which goes along with the same thing, a response plan, and train people that could be in the way of that. Won't keep hands to self or becomes aggressive. Again, we want to look at the motivation. Is it attention from peers or adults? Is it a sensory need? We're going to want to set very clear expectations during the time that it's likely to occur. So if you notice it standing in line, before we stand in line, we're going to talk about that expectation and practice it. Is it a sensory need? Do we need to make sure something else is in their hands so that they can still get that avenue out? If it becomes aggression, we're going to block to protect other students. Safety is always number one. When the behavior continues to feel challenging, I want you to remember that you are limited. No one expects you to have the perfect answer for every situation, and nobody expects you to solve every situation. When it gets difficult and it starts to feel challenging, observe and document if possible and communicate with me. And then we can brainstorm ideas. We can brainstorm ideas with the classroom teacher, and it might be a time to involve parents and students as well. So, do not hang on your own when things feel too challenging. I want you to reach out. So now that we've looked at why we are doing this special needs ministry and the ways that we hope to meet the needs of our students better, I just wanted to say thank you for serving. It takes a lot of hands and a lot of hearts to get a buddy system started because it's a network. And you have a large part in that. So I just wanted to say thank you. We know that serving is a sacrifice, but we are praying that you see the fruits of what you're doing quickly and that you grow to love these kids like your own. I'll be reaching out to you and giving you all the information on your child as well as specifics on serving. But for now, I just wanted to say thank you for serving.